340,908 acres of farmland in the United States in 2000 were planted with Starlink corn, a GM crop with its own built-in Bt pesticide. Although it was not approved for human consumption, the likely allergenic Starlink corn variety found its way into Kraft taco shells and Taco Bell food outlets, as well as another 300 brand-name food products throughout U.S. supermarkets. Kraft, the largest food corporation in America, was forced to recall 2.5 million boxes of the corn tacos, and the biotech industry lost many millions of dollars and a large portion of consumer confidence.
The Starlink variety had a variety of the so-called Bt protein, which is a pesticidal protein. EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, is the responsible party for approving the use of a pesticide in the food. In this particular case, they had given an approval for the use in animal feed, but had not yet approved it in human food because they were asking for more information to ensure that this protein was not an allergen.
And they based this on the good graces of Aventis, and Aventis saying, this is how we are going to make sure that Starlink does not get into the human food chain. They were supposed to have letters to all the farmers who used it. These are specific grain elevators you're supposed to take the corn to, etc. Well, they didn't quite do their job. Farmers had no idea. Elevator operators had no idea.
They, the company who was producing it, put in place a system whereby farmers who grew the crop would be selling it for animal feed or for some other industrial uses, but not human food. As we all know, for one reason or another, and I'm not sure that anyone knows exactly how it happened, some of the Starlink crop did wind up in human food.
So what's happened is, basically Aventis was, did not do its job. I think it's a glaring example of what happens when you allow self-regulation of an industry.
You would think that there would be just a slowing down of the move into genetically engineered foods while these issues are checked out. But that's not happening. It's like push, 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 market, 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 sell, 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 and worry about whether it's safe or it hurts the environment tomorrow. That's not a good way to treat the public.
Because of all the unknowns, we as farmers demand a suspension of all further environmental releases and government approvals of genetically engineered seeds and agricultural products. We demand an immediate, independent, and comprehensive assessment of the social, environmental, health, and economic impact of genetically engineered seeds and agricultural products. We demand a ban on the ownership of all forms of life, including a ban on the patenting of seeds, plants, animals, genes, and cell lines. It only makes sense.
Scientists are saying that the Starlink contamination could have potential allergenic effects and may show up in our food supply indefinitely. While it's possible to isolate genetic material in the laboratory and to examine the effects of these foods on human health, many scientists warn that the threat to the environment is greater still.
We can't contain this stuff. These are living organisms. It's not like chemical pollution. This is biological pollution. It grows, it breeds, it expands. How do you recall that? I mean, as terrible as an oil slick is, you can put a boom around where the slick happens and try to mitigate it, and hopefully it dilutes over time. There's no dilution here. Once it's out, it's out. And we've allowed it to go out without any regulation. That's ridiculous.
Genetic altered canola is here forever. You cannot put a life-giving form into the environment. It's here forever. One seed can produce from 4,000 to 10,000 plants the following year. So that's how quickly it can spread.
farmers are experiencing a whole new set of rules with the introduction and cultivation of genetically modified food crops. Cross-pollination, or genetic drift, has long been understood and used by farmers to improve on particular traits within a species. Now, however, with all new classifications of foods, the farm industry must learn all new rules to accommodate the new plant species.
Okay, genetic drift refers to the fact that genetic information from one plant, if it's compatible with it, if they're like species, genetic information can move from one to the other, mostly through pollen. And so genetic drift refers to that ability of pollen to move from one area to another.
We know that bees travel a mile in any direction from their hive. A mile in any direction from their hive. This is standard science. Okay. Anything that's pollinated by bees or where bees may visit even, including squash and other kinds of crops, flowers, and anything else they come in contact with, those crops may be suspect.
Gene pollution occurs much more easily than anybody ever suspected. First, it was believed that neighboring crops would more or less be safe from one another, but now we know that that gene will drift for miles, and the rapid communication of gene pollution is inevitable. That's why the organic farmers are so up in arms today. Their whole industry is threatened because of the encroachment through gene pollution of genetic engineering into their foods and crops.
When I was an organic certification official in 1998, I went to an organic farmer's place in central Illinois, and he had grown 80 acres of corn, and on 3 sides of him, he fronted the highway, and then on 3 sides by this corn, there was BT, genetically modified corn, being grown next to the farmer. But I took one look at this cornfield and recognized that he was probably going to have a problem if he didn't segregate his corn harvest.
This farmer divided his crop into 3 sections, starting from the outside and moving toward the center of the field. Samples were sent for testing, and the outer rows were contaminated with genetically modified corn.
But if he had put all of that together, it would have been completely contaminated, and his organic corn, which was worth eventually about $4.50, would have been instead worth $1.75.
With many countries in Europe and Asia rejecting GM foods, major U.S. agricultural exports of soy and corn have lost international trade value.
They can't trade this stuff to Europe. I mean, they're losing, what, 200 million, 300 million, something like that a year in grain sales.
If a farmer was growing genetic altered canola and I was growing conventional canola, when you hauled it to the canola gathering station, it was all mixed together. So now Europe will not buy 1 bushel of any canola from Canada, so we've lost 25% of our sales just to Europe alone. So our price of canola has dropped in half in about a year's time. So it has tremendous economic impact.
Manufacturers, processors, farmers, and handlers are all concerned about how the crops get contaminated. Is it in the field, in the trucks or the silos, or is it in the manufacturing facility?
Another thing that organic farmers have to do is they have to clean out all their equipment. For instance, if my brother, say I'm an Iowa farmer, my brother helps me with my harvest every year, and he's a conventional farmer. Well, I got to tell John that he must clean out his truck, clean out his combine, clean out his auger, and clean out his field wagon before he comes and helps me. So he puts an air blower in there, compressed air, and blows the thing clean, because we can't get any contamination on this organic crop. This is mandatory in organic production.
Right now, there are only 17 to 20 foods that have been genetically manipulated and marketed. But unfortunately, these include such things as soy, corn oil, canola oil, etc., that makes its way into the majority of processed foods. So as a result, at the moment, approximately 70% of the items in the grocery stores contain genetically engineered ingredients.
In just 6 years, commercially grown transgenic foods have expanded to present-day proportions. In the United States, more and more farmland is being turned over to large-scale factory farms where huge tracts of land are devoted to a single crop. the number of American family farmers is dwindling as they struggle to keep up with the rapid developments in agriculture.
They are in charge of getting...